Hello and welcome to the second day of the NASCIO 2020 Mid-Year Webcast Series. I'm Dennis Goulet, NASCIO President and Commissioner for the state of New Hampshire. For those of you who didn't join us yesterday, I have a little bit of housekeeping to go over before I introduce the panel. First, because our environments may not be the norm right now, with many of us working from home, all participants are muted and will be throughout the session. You can submit questions for the speakers in the sidebar panel. All sessions will be recorded and posted to nascio.org by the end of this week. After the session, and any time over the next few weeks, we invite all members to visit the virtual networking lounge on the NASCIO community. This is the place to talk about session content, share resources, ask for advice, or just say hello to your colleagues. There has been some great conversations in the lounge so far, so let's keep that going today. You should have received details about how that group and how to gain access in an email on what to know for a successful event. If you need any help, email Emily Lane on the NASCIO team at elane@nascio.org. She will get your question to the correct person for a quick answer. This morning's session, not business as usual, will focus on innovations and changes that came about because of the COVID-19 response, but has application once we're through this situation. My friend Nelson Moe, CIO of Virginia, will serve as moderator and is joined by other friends, Ed Toner, CIO of Nebraska, Jeff Wan, CIO of Missouri, Mike Leahy, CIO of Maryland. Jeff is having a little bit of video problems, but his audio is working fine. And now I'll turn it over to you, Nelson.
I've tried
Thank you, Mr. President. Dennis, can you hear me okay?
rebooting and everything.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, okay. So first of all, thank you, everybody, for
I'm
joining
good,
us. And just to make sure, I've got Jeff on audio from Missouri, Ed from Nebraska, and Mike Leahy from Maryland. I want to thank the panelists for their time today. And we are going to go over business not as usual as far as our topic. The general overall theme is we're going to discuss innovation that states and commonwealths have pursued during the COVID-19 pandemic, which may or may not have a lasting impact. The discussion will center around the areas of technical innovation and business process innovation, for example, like data governance in my particular state. But before I go, I'd like to make sure we have a little quick intro. For those who don't know me, I'm Nelson Moe. I'm the Commonwealth of Virginia CIO, also the state's IT procurement officer. I've been in the job for 5 years. I've had a chance to work with NASCIO, and I find it extremely valuable in things that we need to do as CIOs for our different states. And so I would suggest that all the individuals on this call use their NASCIO resources to the best extent, because I found them invaluable. And so what I'd like to do is to give a quick shout out to Jeff and Ed and Mike and have them do a quick thumbnail of themselves, and then we'll start into the questions of the panel. So Jeff, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself and Missouri.
All right. Can I pass off to someone else? I'm almost ready to join with video.
Okay, all right. You want to do me again, or should we go to Ed? No, go Ed, you're up.
Okay, Ed Toner. I've been the state of Nebraska CIO for exactly 5 years next month. Coming from the private sector, so this is the first time in public service. We here in Nebraska have really fared fairly well as far as the COVID outbreak, and haven't really seen too much. We just opened up for business in many of our counties, haircuts and nail salons and restaurants and things of that sort. So if my hair looks a little long, haven't got to the hair cutter yet, but they are open here in Nebraska.
Hey, thank you, Ed. Mike, how about you?
Well, good morning. I'm Mike Leahy. I'm the Secretary of Information Technology and the CIO for the state of Maryland. I've been in the position for 3 years, and it has been very different than anything I've ever done before. I spent most of my previous career as an attorney and as a serial entrepreneur. The state has weathered things very well so far. Like everyone else, we've had some adventures with folks working from home or virtually, and dealing with some of our technology debt. And the good news from all of this is folks are now thinking about how well things have worked when we allow ourselves, as Ed will talk about, to think about not just doing things quickly, but doing them with a view to the future and doing them right. So I'm very optimistic going forward.
You betcha, Mike. Thank you. Jeff, are you ready, or do you want us to move on to the questions?
I am ready.
Okay, so a little about yourself, Jeff, and what Missouri is doing.
I have been in IT for about 30 years, and I started out doing consulting in the St. Louis area with Fortune 500 companies, and then went to the Federal Reserve and became CTO in the St. Louis Fed, and then did projects for the entire Federal Reserve. After that, I went to the IRS in their modernization program. After that, Edward Jones Investments, and as far as worldwide infrastructure, and then a Fortune 500 insurance company, and then CIO for another insurance company for the last 7 years. And I started in January 16th here in the state of Missouri as CIO. And the state of Missouri is a semi-centralized IT shop. We have 12 of 16 agencies, and I have about 1,000 staff that are distributed amongst the agencies. Many of them are embedded. Quite a few of them are still part of directly what we do, especially infrastructure, security, et cetera, et cetera. Glad to be on the call.
You betcha, Jeff. Good to see you. So what I'd like to do is go over our panel theme again, and then examples of the technical business innovation and business process innovation. For example, states across the nation have been successful in rolling out chatbots for their unemployed insurance, financial risk modeling, contact tracing, remote work technologies, analytics, business process streaming, cybersecurity actions, and then any other items we can think of. But I'd like to start with a general set of questions, and I'll go through like a round robin for the panel. So each of you will get a chance to answer this question. But I'll start with Ed, if I could. And that way you guys can tee up your answers too. So the general question for the group is, have you made any near-term organizational changes to better handle the situation? For example, will work from home be a lasting feature of your support model, both technically and procedural wise? So Ed,
Okay.
go ahead with answer that question.
Yeah, we've definitely made a few adjustments, and really a lot of this came from my private sector background, working for a company that did transaction processing. Whenever we got into an area such as we're in now with the states, like it was a credit card processing company, First Data. We put a freeze on any change whatsoever, unless it was critical, like security patching and things of that sort, from Black Friday through Christmas. Well, we immediately did that here in Nebraska because I really wanted my team to be focused on support of the increased volumes that we were seeing. I didn't want anything obviously to be interrupted. And so I really just brought that trick in from the private sector of, if you're going to have a problem, it's going to be caused by a change. So organizationally, we changed that so that we weren't really focusing on changing anything in our environment other than critical changes and, of course, security updates and things of that sort. We then started the work from home, but we did it in a very systematic, phased approach. Right at the beginning, we sent anyone that was in that vulnerable category home immediately across the state. And so what that did was, obviously with the aged workforce that we all have, probably about 25% of the people were working from home. The good news about that is we had that first group that we could figure out what could we do better when we're sending people home. Here in Nebraska, we actually have a COOP plan where we're a continuation of operations where we're graded every year, and we're required to do things such as work from home. So we really had the infrastructure, we had the VPN and Citrix capacity, we had the multi-factor authentication capacity. Our only real issue was once these folks actually started working from home, some of them had never been in the test groups that worked from home. And so we had to really staff up our service desk to make sure that we could assist those people remotely to connect from their home. And so really our initial focus was to help people to set their systems up, to get into via VPN, and get their multi-factor authentication going. And the fact that we phased this in really helped us because we learned a lot from the first phase. And so we created a lot of things, a lot of better documentation. We also did videos, things of that sort, which really helped those folks. And so what we saw was a spike in calls during phase 1. And then we had subsequent phases all the way down to phase 4, where we still have critical personnel that still work across the state, and we support them here at the state.
Okay. Thanks, Ed. Mike, same question. Any near-term organizational changes and will work from home be a lasting feature?
Absolutely. I think the simple answer is we had our significant organizational changes last fall. And as you know, because you and I have talked about it, Nelson, we went to being a chargeback state and set up what we're calling portfolio officers that are basically folks that are business relationship managers. We've set them up that they report to the deputy chiefs of staff in the governor's office for each of their portfolios. So we have an environmental portfolio, a commerce portfolio. And the principal change is that those folks have become significantly busier because of our remote operations and really have become the hub for communication. So as we hear that certain agencies are having similar problems, the portfolio officers are speaking to each other several times a day. And we're, for the first time, at least since I've been here, really coordinating efforts in a way that is creating more of a sense of enterprise. In terms of, are we going to have people work from home more? I have said it, and I think folks believe I'm kidding, but I'm not. I'm giving serious thought to turning my agency practically, except for our knock and sock and things of that sort, into a virtual agency. The state has, like everyone else, significant revenue shortfalls coming this year. We have a lot of leases on rented property that are going to close out in this next year. And if we can free up space, my agency has most of a building that belongs to the state and allow other agencies to go there. We can certainly save substantial amounts on the revenue shortfall in terms of the real estate portfolio.
Thanks, Mike. Jeff, last one. Again, any near-term organizational changes, and will work from home be a future for the state of Missouri?
Well, like Ed, we had a huge shift in our help desk, and we took 100 other people from IT and put them on our help desk. We already had VDI and a lot of other types of technologies to be able to do remote. All of IT pretty much was remote already, but we were able to go from about 2,000 people that had remote to up to 20,000. And most of that was done through VDI. Some of it was done, we ordered 2,000 laptops and we configured those and rolled those out. What we did is I found out how many laptops we were supposed to be ordering for the rest of this year as far as our normal replacement cycle, and ordered that all at once. And so we were using those to roll out work at home. As far as other organizational changes, we added some contractor staff from the to help us with our Cisco phone system. We set up soft phones. We already had that technology, so we are using soft phones through most of the VDI. We've extended call centers exponentially using the Cisco soft phone technology. As far as the work at home is going to be a lasting feature, you bet. It's going to be a sea change for our state government. There had been sort of an aversion to work at home before, not so much in IT, but outside of IT. That has radically changed. And so we're going to see that going forward. I've been following Gartner for many years as far as the cost of remote workers versus the cost of people in buildings. And so we're going to make sure that we refresh that research so that as we go in and finish our 2021 budget cycle, that we make sure that is covered as the different agencies want to continue with the work at home. So that's going to be an interesting challenge in the new budget cycle that we're in with significantly decreased revenues.
Thanks, Jeff. So I just thank you. I'm getting questions from the group. We're going to hold those to the end of the panel session. So just keep in mind, for the people who are listening, as the questions come in, I'll read them at the end. Next question for the group is, any thoughts? I'm going to go the same pattern. Any thoughts of what we would stop doing in light of the foreseeable budget impacts? Any project areas or service rollbacks or service changes you think are coming? I'll give an example. One could consider, if you have a technical refresh plan, you could delay it to minimize costs to the agencies if you're chargeback like me. And those are things we're kicking around, those ideas, but nothing in concrete. But Ed, what have you thought about not doing or doing less of to anticipate this?
We really have not thought about doing anything that would be service impacting. Right now, we're in a situation where we are 100% chargeback also. Yeah. And I actually see that when we come out of this, there's going to be a higher demand for technology. I'm already getting calls because we're a centralized IT organization. There's been calls from, we started with DHHS about a year ago. We wanted to make a front end portal where there was no wrong door so that anyone can come in, get services from SNAP to WIC to Medicaid, without really having to go to those individual divisions within HHS. And they knew that we were working on that project. It's on hold. As I said, we put a lot of things on hold so we could focus on the pandemic. And now I'm getting calls from the other agencies saying, hey, I know this is a weird idea, but we'd like to join that portal. And I said, no, it's not a weird idea at all. We actually have you penciled in. DMV called, said, hey, I'd like to join that. Labor, because they want a no wrong door also. And that way we can actually share the data. We could give our citizens unique identifiers to protect a lot of the sensitivity. of the data. And now they're thinking more about, wow, technology has really helped us. We just upgraded our unemployment system, brand new cloud solution last year. We did the same thing. We just finished with the DMV solution, also a cloud solution. And so what they're seeing is that they survived this fairly well, as far as the capacity, the lack of latency, and things of that sort. So I actually see the opposite. I see where we're going to be asked to help them much more in their process, their business processes, and really facilitate that more through technology, because what they're seeing is the technology actually held up. Where they ran into problems and bottlenecks was when they went to those manual processes. And so they're actually looking more at, this maybe is a good thing for us to stop doing these manual actions and actually move all of this as much as we can to a centralized portal and automate as much as we possibly can.
Okay. So you see a greater need for technology. Mike, moving into
Yeah, I
you.
think the use
Sorry,
case,
go ahead, Ed.
the use case is certainly easier to make.
Yep. Mike, moving to you, you had mentioned office space would be a cost savings opportunity, but anything else as far as budget impacts, as far as services or projects, or is it like Ed?
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
I think the biggest change, as Ed said, is this pandemic, as tragic as it is, has demonstrated to folks that were fearful about technology how it can actually make their lives easier. So our biggest impact going forward immediately will be there are a number of major IT projects that were planned to start in this next year that will probably be put off for some period of time. Our focus is still going to be on modernization of our security processes and on, it's funny, Ed mentioned it, we started a single portal about 2 years ago that our first action was codify all of the permits, licenses, and certifications that folks receive from the state and put them in a search engine, because folks think they're dealing with government. They don't have any idea what agency issues any particular permit. The second phase, which we started last July, was we are now digitizing those applications. And so the focus for portal has been that although we are not an enterprise, this portal will be an enterprise operation.
Yeah.
And it's all designed around workflow. So as Ed said, we are attempting to get folks to be clearer with their business processes and speak to us in English rather than techno speak, and explain to us what it is that's important to them. So along those lines, we've implemented TBM for our accounting.
Yep.
And so we are talking to the agencies now about return on investment rather than what it's going to cost to buy a particular router or whatever. It's been going very well so far, and I suspect, at least I've talked to our budget people, that there are a number of instances where by spending a small amount more than they anticipated, we can coordinate efforts amongst agencies and start to centralize certain legacy technologies that weren't planned to be modernized anytime in the immediate future, because, as I said, we're still a very federated operation.
Thanks, Mike. Jeff, same question for you. Are you going to stop doing things in Missouri because of the looming budget impacts if they're realized? Any projects or service rollbacks or reductions?
Yes. We have, the legislature has put on hold any projects, any new projects for fiscal year 21. Any non-essential projects that are not funded by the federal government are put on hold. The ones that are funded by the federal government are going forward. We expect some budget cuts because we're a state that mandates a balanced budget, and the projected shortfall means that we're definitely going to have to take some backward steps. I don't know where those are right now, but we're expecting them to come. However, a lot of the new technology that we've implemented in the last 2 months has raised some eyebrows in the positive way. And so, as my fellow panelists have said, there is a lining in this a silver lining in this very, very dark cloud.
Yeah, just to add a little bit of what the team has said here, the governor's put out some guidance for us too to be very parsimonious when it comes to the money we have now and going forward. So wait and see. The Commonwealth of Virginia is going through a biennium budget process now. The General Assembly is going to come back here in the summer and finalize the budget for fiscal year 21 and 22, which for us starts in July. So it's kind of wait and see, but yeah, I don't have any. We have to kind of see what's going on and impact us, and we may be asked to make some hard decisions, but we'll find out more in the months to come. Okay, the next question, if I could, is this is more of a technical geeky thing, but how have you addressed at a high level the remote work from demands, work from remote, technical and business process? And I give an example in Virginia. We had a sleepy VPN of 3,000 current connections, and I've had to take it to 7 times that to meet the demand. And it was exciting there for a while. I almost had to ration VPN connections, and that would have made me really popular. Luckily, I missed that boat. Thank you. But I'd just quick thoughts on what you've done to manage remote from work, and if there's anything that's come up that's like, ooh, hey, something that somebody else has done, I want to riff off of that. So Ed, you first. Anything you've done, technical approaches to meet work from home demands?
Well, I've mentioned before we run active at 2 data centers, and one of the things that we do is only critical applications were replicated across both data centers, and the VPN was not deemed at the time to be one of those critical applications. So we had the capacity. We never exceeded more than 80% on that box on our VPN, but at the very beginning, we decided, well, this is a good time to get a second box in our other data center. So we put that in, and so we actually have twice the capacity that we really need, so that if this becomes a permanent thing, we'll not only have redundancy, but we'll have 2 boxes that if we lose one, we'll be able to run the entire state off the other one. So that was really the only change we did. We did that on the background. Again, we froze all changes, but that one was pretty low risk because essentially we were just standing up another box in our other data center. But today we've been actually had all the capacity and all the requirements were met.
You bet, Ed. Mike, you're next. Any new technologies, Citrix, VDI, anything cool and unique up there in Maryland?
Well, the most exciting aspect of all of this for us is when this started, like Ed, we hadn't thought a whole lot about VPN because we had very few people working from home, and our COOP plans all presumed we would go work in the same place, but potentially away from the office buildings.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I have started this with 15 different VPN systems, and they're still all in place.
Yay.
So we did the mix and match of how we're going to coordinate what various agencies have done. In terms of our own VPN, we've gone from about 1,000 people working remotely to a little over 12,000.
Yeah.
And
wow.
I purchased close to 5,000 laptops in a month and a half, which was very exciting given the supply and availability.
Exactly.
And became quite the test of various people's interest in what equipment they had or didn't have. I was kidding agencies about having Dutch auctions for laptops.
There you go.
The biggest issue, which has again been surprisingly in a favorable way, is that because of the pandemic and the state doing things remotely, there are all kinds of phishing scams that look very much like they're coming from the state.
Yeah.
And I have been thrilled that folks in agencies, rather than biting at the clickbait and things of that sort, are sending it to us and allowing us to trace these things. And so it's sort of proof that our education of the frontline workers has been successful, and we are now looking into how do we educate them to be more sophisticated in recognizing these sorts of threats.
Okay. All right, Jeff, for you now, how have you addressed the work demands? And if you want to add to what Mike talked about as far as cybersecurity, that'd be great too.
Okay. As far as the others, VPN, VDI, etc., we just added more licenses. That's all we did, because we already had this set up. And fortunately, we had one kind of VDI and one kind of VPN, so we were a little bit more prepared than some of our friends. But that we still had challenges, especially working through procurement, getting those things.
Yep.
As far as security goes, we've not really seen all that much. We have a lot of filters in place. We especially have refreshed our training of across the state. We usually did quarterly training for security. Now we were training about every 3 weeks. We were refreshing, and especially phishing and those kinds of things. In our Outlook, everyone has a little phishing button on their Outlook, so they could just click on the email and click the phishing, and it automatically goes to our team. One of the questions here is how has this changed our cybersecurity approach?
Yep.
With the bring your own device. Let's put it this way: my CISO's having a little bit of heartburn right now, but I'm trying to say it's okay.
Okay.
It's been done before.
Look it up.
And we're definitely embracing more of that, and I guarantee you all of our agencies are more embracing that going forward. So there will be some broader policies going forward for bring your own device.
Thank you, Jeff. Ed, I'm going to ask you about the security approach here in a second, but as you prep for that, I'm going to say that at least in Virginia, we did all these work remote stuff, but we've seen a gigantic demand, ginormous demand on DocuSign. It was the remote document signing. So it was a sleepy little thing. We did it. We had a service. All of a sudden, boom, enterprise level licensing. And so that was the unique thing. I didn't anticipate. Oh, and remote, because I wet sign everything because I'm of that generation. But everybody wants to have this digital signature and tracking tool. So, our Department of Corrections won 1,000 licenses right off the bat. So that was unique for me. But before I close out this question, Ed, do you want to add any more about the cybersecurity approach for Nebraska?
No, I mean, we've continued the same approach. We recently moved all of our email into the cloud, and we picked up additional security there, but then we actually left in place some of the things that we had when we were on-prem. Again, it was kind of a overkill, but it was one of those things that we kind of felt like we wanted to extend. We were going to get rid of some of the things we had on-prem, but we extended it through this pandemic just because we saw that uptick. I do want to share one kind of funny story. My team did get concerned. Of course, we've got one VPM and one Citrix solution and one VDI solution, and so they did worry. We had plenty of capacity and everything, except for they were kind of concerned about the VPN, and which is why we purchased another server. And really, we didn't need it at this time, but it will be good going forward. But back in the day, I told my team, don't worry about it. Back in the day, when VPN was just getting started and no one had enough licenses years ago, we used to do the trick of just kicking everybody off every once in a while. And we got all those people who were working from home and not paying attention. And I said, don't worry about it. I'll free up 25% every few hours. I'll just knock people off. And they laughed, but that was an old trick. from us
Mhm.
old guys. We certainly all use that trick. My team hadn't heard of that before, so I thought it was kind of funny. But anyone having that problem, just kick them off every once in a while.
Yeah. Make them re-sign in. Okay, good. Next one is, next question for the group is, how have you as the state CIO or in your role helped address the medical response side of this event with a lasting impact? I know that Jim Weaver out of Washington State had done a bunch of good stuff in this area, and I'm more of a support role here as we're looking for PPE and testing. And but have you guys been involved with telehealth testing and data analysis and contact tracing, more of the supporting the Department of Health areas of your state, not necessarily your area, but focusing on that. So getting back to you, Ed, have you had a chance to do any of that, and if so, what?
Yeah, I'm involved in a lot of the contact tracing solution that we're going with. We have we partnered up with a cloud solution that's being used in Utah and Iowa. So there's 3 states going together with one solution. We do a lot of, and with that solution, we're encouraging, it's called Chest Nebraska, encouraging folks to go online, put in their information, and what that does is whether or not you have symptoms or whether or not you have, any type of conditions, what it's doing is it's helping the state to determine who is going to be the first groups that are tested. And so we have 1.9 million people in the state of Nebraska, so we're a fairly small state. We have, a couple 100,000 have already taken that online survey. And what that's doing is it's really focusing us on those folks who really need to be tested first. Again, just kind of like our phase solution to everything. And so with that, that's helping our contact tracing data analysis, and we've got several testing sites set up across the state, and those are mobile, and they're being assisted by the National Guard also. So I think, with the survey, really targeting the folks who need to be tested first, and then moving down the list. Really, we're just really in a support role for that, and it's working fairly smoothly.
Okay, Mike, same question. How have you helped the medical side of this event with the technology? Yeah, go ahead.
We've been very active with the tracing efforts. We're building the application with the health department. We were integral in bringing NORC in to run the telecenter. We're going to have a mobile application, so once people are in the system, they will be questioned on a daily or multiple day cycle to talk about their symptoms, how their symptoms change. And we're also going to have a self-reporting, much like what Ed just talked about, so that folks who are developing symptoms can report in and allow us to incorporate them into our data sets for the analytics. As you may have heard, we were able to procure 500,000 tests from South Korea last week, and the mobile test centers are operational, and the adult living and nursing home circumstances have demonstrated to be the most at risk. So we are testing everyone who works in those centers and limiting access using the analytics of who has been proactive in that area particularly. In terms of telehealth and other aspects, we have a rather robust private system here in Maryland doing exactly that. So we haven't been involved with that specifically, nor with obtaining PPE or testing. But the biggest thrust has been in actually building the application and in helping folks with the data analytics.
Okay. Jeff, last one for you, for us questions here. What do you think about helping in Missouri for medical side of the event?
We've been heavily involved in the PPE side. We worked with Google and created a marketplace. And that marketplace was for all of the healthcare providers in Missouri to post what their needs were, and then the vendors to post what they had available to match make and put them together. So no transactions happened in that marketplace, but it was basically a way to bring everybody together to match suppliers with needs. That was phase one. Phase two that we're going to be putting into production is matching manufacturers of supplies to create PPE with the PPE suppliers. And so that's going to go into production as well. We also were involved with our health in being able to do the contact tracing and also test the tracking of testing. Also to do what we call, from my background in insurance, spreadsheet enrollment. Basically being able to go in and take a extract from, let's say, a prison or a nursing home or other of people that are in that institution or meat packing plant, whatever, import it into the system and be able to trace that particular entity and what testing is being done in that particular entity, so that we know what's happening with any given nursing home or anywhere where we do a box testing. And so we're in the process of putting that in place now. Okay. And we have a number of vendors that are working with us.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for that answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift now to a specific topic area for each of the panelists. You know, their hot button issue they want to talk about. I give about a minute or so each, and then we're going to field some questions from the group that they're going to be fed to me, and I'll read. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through Ed, Mike, and Jeff and tee them up for any specific area they would like to talk about as far as about the event and going forward. And I'll start with Ed here. You had mentioned to me something about the right versus first thing. Do you want to talk about that or something else as far as things? So this is your 1 minute of fame and say, hey, remember anything that really bugged you about this? Here you go. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, I think everybody knows me. I like to be second. I have no problem about watching someone else be first in with technology and then really copying what really works, right? So Nebraska, we'll sit around, we'll watch, and it's kind of like the show me state. Maybe I should be in Missouri, but I want to see that it worked before we ever put anything out there. And you know, I've read several things. You know, rushing technology out has always been something that maybe, you know, because I come from the finance industry with TD Ameritrade and First Data, you can't afford to make a mistake, even one. Okay. It costs you millions of dollars. Okay. And so maybe I've always been hesitant with new technology. And so again, we've taken that approach here. I can tell you some of the you know, when we do get complaints about things, it normally is because we've rushed. We've gone too quickly.
Okay. Thanks, Ed. Mike, I'm teeing you up. You had mentioned something about procurement. Do you want to talk about that or something more exciting or less exciting?
More exciting than procurement. Oh my God. No,
but
absolutely.
you had talked about that. I'm making light of it. I'm the procurement officer. I understand it, but you had talked about agile procurement processes, and I think that's what you want to talk about here.
Yeah. Well, what's most amazing is we were the control agency and the procurement agency for all technology until October last year. So it moved to our Department of General Services. Yeah. And like all new processes, there are some bumps along the road. Yep. But what I find most interesting, and what I've talked to the comptroller and the governor's staff and anyone who will listen, is
Yep.
that they did something that I think is brilliant, in that anything involving COVID and potential use of federal grants and other funds has been shifted to the CFO of the health department.
Yeah.
Speed things up dramatically,
Yeah.
rather than letting the process go through the typical, to the Department of General Services, then to the budget office, then to the comptroller, and on and on and on. And so the principal issue we're talking about is, we certainly want to safeguard use of the taxpayers' funds,
Yep.
but there are, times that you don't need 16 belts and suspenders.
Yep.
And it's more a function of, how are we going to look at these transactions after the fact to make sure that there was no fraud and things of that sort. And it's worked extraordinarily well so far. So again, I'm bullish on us getting better at procuring and being able to do things faster to address the needs in the state.
Yeah, I agree with you too, Mike. Jeff, same question for you, but I think you talked about chatbots as one of the things you were excited about. So if you could walk us through that in the next minute or so. Okay.
Sure. Like most everybody, our unemployment insurance exploded, and in order to help relieve calls from the call center, we implemented a chatbot. We did it in about a week, and then about a week and a half to train it. And so we've got it down now so that we can deploy a chatbot technically in about 24 hours. And we've set up 4 of them now. And other areas of government are now lining up. They want to do the same thing. So it takes us about a week to week and a half from pushing the go button before it goes live. Most of that is training the chatbot.
Okay.
And so this has been very, very good. And so we're excited about how that has happened. We did not say that it's artificial intelligence, because that's like black helicopters in Missouri.
Skynet.
They're just chatbots.
Okay, good. Well, good. So thank you, guys. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get questions from the field, and I'm going to get fed to me, and I'll read them out loud here. So I have one here, and as they come rolling up, I will pass them on. The first one's for Ed in Nebraska. What was the time frame for teleworking and Nebraska? When did the first 25% start working from home? This is from our first question. Ed, do you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that was late March, where we didn't get right when we got our first case, we began that transition. We were a little bit late to the game, luckily. And we're still very low in the number of deaths and the number of actual positive cases. So I couldn't tell you exactly the time frame, but it was definitely in March, because we definitely wanted to protect those folks that were vulnerable. And then it was really a weekly progression after that. We were all done by the middle of, by the second week. So I won't say the middle of April, but by the second week of April. So we've been pretty much working from home for probably 3 to 4 weeks now. We don't fully work from home. My leadership staff and we rotate every other day. I'm in the office today. We have probably about 10 people on each floor, because they're just essential workers that have to be here. But we also rotate those folks out, and we keep social distancing. But we've never really gone to a 100% work from home status, and we probably won't. We're going to bring people back in the same way that we had them go and work from home. We're going to start to bring back some more of the essential workers. Of course, the last group that would come back would be those folks that are more vulnerable. I see as probably increasing our work from home, but I don't see it dramatically increasing.
Okay. Next question, then I'll pass this around to Mike here and let him answer. Mike, in Maryland, are you reprioritizing your digital transformation technology projects because of the pending budget cuts?
Well, again, we have to see what revenues actually come in, but that is our focus at this point. And as I said at the beginning, I think there are so many opportunities to demonstrate that by continuing forward with some of these processes, we will actually save money for the state. So it's dynamic and fluid, and my hope is that the projects that we defer are ones that have not started yet, and that mostly go to enhancing existing systems that are legacy systems rather than the modernization process of new digital processes.
Okay. And here's one for Jeff, I think. Or we could probably round robin this one, but I'll start with Jeff. How are you dealing with any increased attack surface attack surface based on remote access services? I mean, from a cybersecurity perspective, how are you dealing with that? How are you dealing with the additional risk of that, Jeff?
Well, our VDI it also goes through a VPN tunnel, and so we've got double and triple encryption, and so since with VDI nothing is on the desktop except for the screen scraping, we're just continuously monitoring it, and we're not having any issues whatsoever.
Okay. Jeff, same question for you, because I have a specific one for Mike that somebody just sent in that I'm going to tee up for him. So same question for you. Have you had changed any of the your approaches based on the attack surface area from working from home? Ed, anything in your area?
That question was for me. Nelson?
Yeah, I just want to say that the same question as far as have you changed your cybersecurity posture based on the attack surface from working from home?
No, we don't. All of our policies and procedures are still in place. Of course, we're a little more diligent with our SIM tool and things of that sort. Just checking to make sure that we are looking at the environment much closer. And we really, everything goes through that VPN. And of course, we've got multi-factor authentication on everything, and we encrypt all transmissions.
Okay. And what I think might be our last question, because we're at 11:55, it's for you, Mike. What has changed for your CISO InfoSec team with most of your people working from home?
I think the biggest change is that we have people who want to use tools that have not been vetted. So like all of you, I think have probably heard, we have lots of folks that want to have Zoom meetings. And we have attempted to first cajole them into not using it, and finally we pulled it off all of our devices. So I think the biggest issue is folks get creative and try to do things their own way, and when that creates potential vulnerabilities in the network, we want to address it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I turned into Mr. Bad Guy when the CISO and I, Mike Watson, said, "Zoom, what's that?" It's a drinking game, I think, when I was in college. But no, it's this tool that everybody has to have. So we looked at that, and then whenever the world came, there was a problem. We kind of turned it off. Hey, what I'd like to do, it's 11:55. I'd like to close out the panel. I want to thank Ed, Mike, and Jeff for joining me, and everybody else in the panel for Business Not As Usual. And this comes to conclusion of our hour together. Thank you again, guys. Thank you for your time. Dennis?
Thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank the panelists. That was, above and beyond everything else, a demonstration of the amazing creativity you folks have brought to the situation. I had a couple things to reflect on that I thought were important from my perspective. One being that demand for technology is going to continue to be important. In fact, I would encourage all CIOs to begin working on messaging around that to your budget authorities, so that even though the pot may be smaller as we go into the next cycle, that that your IT function get a bigger piece of that pot. With respect to the working from home and whether that's going to ever go back to the way it was, I would agree that the genie is out of the bottle. People have figured out that you can exist while working from home, and I do believe that will continue. And then another thing that I heard theme just going through all of the conversations just now was the importance of business relationship management. You could hear in each of one of those gentlemen's conversations how well they understood the businesses they were supporting and how close their relationships were, which enabled their success and their ability to adapt quickly. And on a lighter note, I just want to point out that it's really heartwarming that the NASCIO Secretary Treasurer talked about procurement as one of his important things. So thank you, Mike, for that. So now I want to encourage you all to head over to the virtual networking lounge. You can join in current conversations or start a new thread. Thank you for joining this session, and I hope you'll join us for the closing session at 3 p.m. Eastern on what comes after COVID-19. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.